So I don't know how many times I've heard about the different generations, the boomer, the Gen X, the millennial, Gen Z. By 2030, 30% of the workforce will be composed by Gen Z. So who better than Taylor Smith, who's a Gen Z, who is a journalist for Meetings Today, can talk about it. She did a wonderful presentation recently at MPI Modification Conference with Michael Owen. And it is my pleasure to have today Taylor Smith as a guest on the podcast. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I have the great pleasure of having as a guest someone who's going to teach us a lot about Gen Z in the workplace. She was doing a session at MPI WEC with the famous Michael Owen, and it was absolutely fascinating what they were exchanging. She is the content development destination and features at Meetings Today, the one and only Taylor Smith. Taylor, how are you?
I'm so great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Eric, and for all the kind words and such a wonderful introduction.
Well, you know what? You deserve it. It was a fabulous session. The two of you and all the preparation you did, and I know you put a lot of time in the preparation, and it was an amazing session. And there's more to it, which is why we are speaking today.
Yes.
But first, because I'm very curious in content development destination, so far I understand, and features. What is features?
So features are in Meetings Today magazine, we write, in addition to covering destinations, we'll write about different trends in the industry. So for example, I am the wellness beat reporter at Meetings Today. So in every issue, I write a feature about wellness trends in the industry and what's going on in terms of bringing wellness into events, or different trends like forest bathing is a new one that I've heard of, or crystal healing and things like that. All these new crazy wellness trends that we're hearing. I'll write about those. And then I write about sustainability. I'll write about new and renovated properties. I just wrote one about hotels that have these speakeasy style spaces for groups to gather. So the features really give me some freedom to get creative with what I'm writing about.
That's great. And you say well-being, you say crystal healing. I've heard about it.
Crystal healing.
You say something else before. I didn't catch.
Forest bathing.
Forest bathing.
Yes.
That the people are hugging trees?
So it's all about just immersing yourself in nature and taking a hike, being a part of the world around you, unplugging your phone, disconnecting from the world, and surrounding yourself in nature and your natural surrounding. So it's got an interesting name, but really it is just being outside in a forest and taking it all in.
Yeah, exactly what we were doing before the invention of the smartphone.
Exactly.
That's another Gen Z way of expressing things.
100%. Yeah.
So, Taylor, you have already traveled a lot. You've seen a lot in the industry. Now, talking about wellness, for some mystical, philosophical, psychological reason, we always praise ourselves. Oh, we're in the top 5 most stressing job in the world, blah, blah, blah. What is this insanity? And what do you see in terms of being more aware of work-life balance in the industry today?
Yes. So I think this actually ties well into our Gen Z conversation, because I think that as young professionals enter the industry, Gen Z is so in tune with how they spend their time, and they prioritize having that balance between work and life in a way that previous generations may not have prioritized as much. We've all, especially in the US, I think that a lot of us live to work and our jobs take up so much of our time. But when the pandemic came around, Gen Z, especially, I was in college, I was learning remotely from my house on Zoom, and I realized that I had so much more freedom when I was able to, 5 minutes between classes, I could throw my laundry in, and then after my next class, I could go take it out and throw it into the dryer. And I realized that it is possible to have that work-life balance even during the workday, to run a quick errand or make a quick phone call. And that's something that Gen Z is kind of showing us what is possible there. In our industry, we have a unique job in that a lot of us we'll be on the clock 9 to 5, but we're answering emails at 11 o'clock at night before we go to bed, or it's the weekend and a client needs us for something. We don't hesitate to pick up our phone and give them a call. And I think being in, like you mentioned, one of the most stressful industries that there's a need for us to emphasize wellness and taking a step back and taking care of ourselves. And Gen Z, I think, is going to be a good reminder of that and a good example of how we can approach finding that balance in our lives while still giving our all to our jobs and doing what we signed up to do. But maybe, considering taking a day off to take care of your mental health if it's something you really need, or communicating with your boss that maybe like therapy is something you want to see in your insurance policy and things like that. We are bringing more awareness to the fact that health is not just physical and what you see on the outside. It's taking care of your mind and what's on the inside as well. And I think finding that work-life balance and reminding ourselves that, yes, this is a stressful industry, but it shouldn't take away from how we care about ourselves, is one thing that has become more of a common topic, I think. And I'm excited to see, as more Gen Zers enter the industry, where it goes from here.
Absolutely. The other thing making me think, listening to you, is we've never had so many tools to communicate. We never had so much information available. And since COVID,
Yes.
I don't think there's ever been so much loneliness.
Oh, 100%.
What have you observed there, and what are your recommendations actually to fight that disease?
Yes. So there is a loneliness epidemic right now. I mean, you see it in the news, you see people posting about it on social media. Gen Z is the loneliest generation at the moment. And I think a lot of this almost comes as a result of how we have become so dependent almost on technology and social media and our phones to stay connected with people, that we've almost forgotten what it means to be face to face in person and building those genuine connections with people. I mean, I could FaceTime my best friend who lives in Los Angeles from Chicago and say that I hung out with her, but it's not the same as flying there and spending a day with her and making memories together, right? And I think a lot of Gen Z struggles with that face-to-face communication. They've gotten so used to, I mean, they don't even have to pick up the phone to order a pizza if they don't want to. They could tap a few buttons, have it delivered to their door, have it left at their door. The driver won't even ring the doorbell. They don't have to make any, physical contact with anyone. And I think that has set us back in how we do build those authentic connections in person, and cause us to feel more loneliness, because even if we're connected with people online, that we're missing, I can't call up a friend to go get coffee. I'm just, I'm enjoying coffee by myself, and I'm seeing all these people online who maybe are posting pictures with their friends and feeling bad about myself for not having, the same kind of photos to be posting because I'm not seeing my friends as often. And I think for a lot of Gen Zers, it's just a reality that we need to work on our people skills a little bit more and get out there and not be so afraid of making those connections. When it comes to finding them, I know you mentioned like some ways to combat the loneliness that we're feeling. I strongly encourage people, for example, I work remotely from my house and just outside the suburbs in Chicago, and it gets really lonely down there in my little office basement, not seeing my coworkers. So I will make sure that every month I set up a check-in call with some of my coworkers, just to keep that relationship building and feel connected to the people I'm working with, and talk about things besides what's on the to-do list for the day. But I will also, if I just need people and to be surrounded by strangers, even, I'll take my work computer, go sit at a local cafe, and even just being around people and feeling like I'm not alone in something is helpful for me. I maybe don't even talk to anyone, or just talk to the barista to get my coffee, but having that interaction and being surrounded by people who are living their lives, doing their own things, makes me feel like I'm a part of the world, and there are people out there that I can connect with. I think it's very important to step out of our comfort zones and try something that maybe scares us a little bit, because that's how we'll meet people, especially in this industry. Network all you can, stay connected with people on LinkedIn, even if you don't see them often. Like, events like IMEX America, I set up so many meetings to meet people in person, and it's like the best little reunion ever. So focus on, even if they're online, those connections can turn into real friendships and genuine connections that you have with people. And I think fostering those relationships, even from a distance, makes them all the much better when you do get together in person, and can help fight that loneliness that we all may be feeling sometimes.
Love it. My youngest daughter was texting the other day. I said, "What are you doing?" "I'm speaking with my friend." I say, "No, you're not speaking. You're texting." And
Yep.
she's like, "Ah."
Yeah, pick
Now,
up the phone. Pick up the phone.
right?
Mhm.
So you said that loneliness issue with Gen Z challenge of being able to have in-person conversation.
Mhm.
I put those two together in, and you're gonna remind me the stat that you share during your presentation with Michael at the MPI, that in some years the Gen Z will be the majority of the workers.
Yes, by 2030, Gen Z will
Right.
make up 30% of the workforce in the US.
30% well, it's tomorrow.
Yes, I
2030 is
know.
tomorrow.
I know.
30% is a lot. And I just want to continue on that thought. We are an industry of people before anything else.
Yes.
We are an industry of relationship. And
Mhm.
yes, you have all this automated RFP pricing project, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, when there's an issue, and there's always an issue, I planned meetings in over 50 countries in the world for 20 years. There was not one project that had not something unexpected.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
So when you put together a generation that has challenged to speak in person, and our industry is also based on people and trust and solving issues, what do you see to solve that?
I had this conversation with a couple of people, and that it's just, I say all the time that to be in this industry, you have to be a people person. You have to love people. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, talk to people, introduce yourself to strangers who maybe they're the CEO of a company and you're brand new in your role, but that should not prevent you and scare you from making that introduction. And if you are someone who struggles with something like that, I have social anxiety, and I was never the kind of person. I was a huge introvert in college. I was afraid to raise my hand in classes because I thought people would judge me. But I worked on building my self-confidence. And that's something that, if someone wants to be in this industry, it is so important to feel secure in yourself when you're going out there and networking, because it's all about, if you're not willing to go out there and sell yourself and introduce who you are, you're not going to make the connections that you need to succeed in this industry. It's just the reality of it. If you are not a people person, if you don't enjoy talking to people, this is probably not the industry for you. And again, that's the reality of it. And if you want to be in this industry, you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. Like I mentioned, try something that scares you. One of the things that helped me a lot was just working on basic networking skills. And even on YouTube, you could Google like how to network at industry events. And there are some really helpful tips out there. I wrote a column recently for the Z, which is my column at Meetings Today, all about networking tips with Mandy Graziano. And she's wonderful. She has some of the most unique networking tips I've heard. But just taking her tips and putting them into practice, I feel prepared going into a room full of strangers with, like I could pull something out of my pocket, and one of the skills that I learned, and I don't feel so caught off guard or unprepared, because I prepared myself ahead of time and said, okay, here's what I'm going to do if I see a circle of people who I don't know, how I'm going to step into the circle and introduce myself and make an impression. So it's as simple as looking up, 5 helpful networking tips, and just giving yourself a little extra kind of encouragement and direction for making those genuine connections. I think it also goes to find the people in your network that you know at industry events. So maybe there's a friend that you can meet up with, walk around with them and have them introduce you to their colleagues, so that you're not doing things alone until you reach the point where you're comfortable doing it yourself. When I started in my role a little over 2 years ago, I definitely was not as outgoing and willing to introduce myself to people as I am now. But through the connections and relationships I've made, I learned how welcoming this industry is, how kind people are, how they're just as excited to meet me as I am to meet them. And that experience too also helped help me find the confidence I needed to be more outgoing and extroverted. So sometimes it just comes with taking that first step and seeing where it takes you, seeing that it's not as scary as it seems, and then growing from there. But there are some people who, as you know, it may be hard to hear, but they just aren't a good fit for the industry if they're not a people person. But there's a fit out there for everyone. So I know that they'll find their place as well. But I do emphasize all the time that this is an industry for people, and that's who you got to be to succeed and make it in meetings and events.
So the person you were talking about that was afraid of raising her hand at
Mhm.
school, was that
Yes,
you?
that was me.
Wow.
Yes, I know. I still do consider myself an introvert, but once I joined this industry and met the people I'd be working with, and like I said, saw how welcoming they are and how eager they are to help me, how maybe
Yeah.
if they don't have the right connection, they'll know someone to connect me to who will. It's a massive community and everyone's got each other's backs. And that helped me to not be afraid to raise my hand anymore because I felt so welcomed and accepted here. And like I had friends and people who liked me for me and who just wanted me to be myself. Authenticity is one thing that I learned is
Mm.
vital in this industry, just being true to yourself and showing people who you really are. And now that I know that people accept me for who that is, I'm not as afraid to go out there and to introduce myself and, raise my hand in the classroom anymore.
That's awesome. Now, just to share something, because it's just the two of us, nobody's listening.
Mhm.
I'm also a recovered introvert. And I remember and will never forget the first time I spoke in public was a student organization in Baito in the north of Norway in 1988. I was extremely well prepared. And I was so afraid that I had no more saliva in my mouth. And then my lips were thick all the time. And I had to put my lips down. And
Yep.
at the end of it, I said, "How was it?" "It was great, but what was this thing with your lips?" I said, "Oh, I was so afraid." Now, you mentioned preparation. You mentioned going out there and putting yourself and basically people are nice. And if they're not nice, then you don't have to deal with them, quite frankly.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
what about the importance of mentorship?
Yes. This is a topic that I am very passionate about, mostly because I have been blessed with the most amazing mentor I could possibly ask for in Tyler Davidson, who's my
Ah,
editor at
yes.
Meetings Today. But there is a need, especially in this industry, where so many people, you'll hear them say they fell into it, right? They maybe didn't know about it, but their career path just led them to this industry that's almost a secret to many, right? You, me, I studied journalism in college. I had no idea obviously I knew what meetings and events were, but I had no idea how much went into it, how big the industry was. And so when I started my role at Meetings Today, I was confident in my ability to write and my knowledge of grammar and the Associated Press style that journalists use, but I knew absolutely nothing about the meetings and events industry. And that was terrifying for me. And it made me a little insecure in my role. And I did, I asked all the questions that I had to get familiar with the industry and what I would be doing. And if it weren't for Tyler being so willing to answer those questions and constantly reassuring me that he understands this is a learning curve, he knows I've got a lot that I still have to pick up on about the industry. And it's no rush. He's not rushing me to understand it. He's here to help me along the way, answer any questions I have. He would introduce me to all his contacts who he thought would be helpful for me to know in the industry, gave me guidance on every story I was writing, even when I felt like I wasn't delivering what I should have been delivering in my role. He would call me on Teams and remind me and say, like, "Hey, you're doing great. You're doing more than we ever would have expected you to be doing at this point. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. You have so much potential and you're picking up on this, faster than we even thought you would. Like you are your own worst enemy," he would remind me, and like
Mm.
I'm being too hard on myself. And having someone who is not only willing to teach me everything I needed to know and be patient with me as I learned, but constantly reassured me that I was putting more pressure on myself than anyone else was, and that I was my own worst critic, and that the team was grateful to have me. That was the most valuable part of the whole experience of starting my career here. And I've said it many times, but if I didn't have Tyler and someone so willing to help me learn and grow in my role, I don't think I would have had the confidence in myself to stay at meetings today. I would have doubted myself. I would have doubted my ability to learn and actually understand this industry. But he was there to lift me up in those moments. And that's what helped me get to where I am now. And still to this day, if there's an opportunity like at MPI WEC, he's the one who told me to put in a proposal for a speaker session. And he's the one who's like always telling me to go for it, always telling me that I can do it. And I'll be sitting here questioning like, I don't know if I'm like the best or like qualified for that. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, fill out this form and just apply, like, see what happens. And he always ends up being right. But he is, there are people out there who, when they start their roles, they don't have that guidance. They don't have that role model to look up to, or they don't have, maybe they ask questions and their superiors look at them like, you should know this already, or don't answer them in a patient way, in a reassuring way. And that will, cause them to not feel comfortable or welcome at the company they're working at. And so I don't think there's anything more important in starting a new role and a new career than having mentorship.
Absolutely. By the way, I believe that it's not only with you. Somebody like Tyler Davidson is a big heart, somebody extremely respected, and has got integrity. He's writing things that he believes, which is important. But he's like that. And I think that if you have a boss that is not supportive, that's probably not only with you. And there's a problem with their leadership.
Oh, 100%. And if you do feel like you are the one that's on the outside of maybe a little circle at work, or like you're the one that your boss picks on all the time, that, again, like you mentioned, it likely doesn't have anything to do with you, especially if you are trying and putting in the effort to do whatever you're asked of and to improve in your role. There's likely something going on that you don't even know about that's preventing you from finding that role model and that mentor and who you're working with. But I've been so blessed to have the mentor that I do in Tyler, and the whole Meetings Today team is just, they're my family at that magazine. I don't know what I'd do without them. Tyler is my mentor, but they're all my family. They're all lifting me up and helping me learn. And it truly has been just the most rewarding experience to, now it's like, I want to make them proud. I want to work hard and give back to them after all they've done for me. And it just makes the relationship stronger and makes me want to continue improving and growing in my job. And I think that, especially as a young person, if you don't have that support and that drive to want to continue making your team proud, you're not going to be willing to put the effort in to do the job that you're capable of doing, because you're not being recognized for it or, lifted up along the way. So it goes both ways. If you want good performance from your young professionals, you need to remind them of what they're capable of and be willing to help them reach that point.
Yeah. And I want to elaborate on that because, in the past, you have like the annual evaluation once a year. So I think that today is not only with Gen Z, but in general, all the generation working together in the company. If you wait for the end of the year to get the evaluation, people are gone. What are your advice on one hand for Gen Z getting into the workplace to make it there and to integrate as best as possible? And on the other hand, what would you recommend any employer to do to integrate Gen Z within the company?
Yes. So when it comes to Gen Zers entering the workforce, I think that it's a huge learning curve going from being, especially when you were so independent in college and learning remotely, you earn this sense of like you're almost in control of yourself and the work that you do. And when you have a boss and a new job and you're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, there are a lot of people who are going to be telling you what to do, and you don't have that sense of freedom necessarily anymore, or independence. And I think that can be hard for a lot of Gen Zers because they are very independent and entrepreneurial, and they like being in control of the work that they do and their time and things like that. But I encourage all Gen Zers to understand that if we want to find a place at a company in our career, we have to be willing to look at things. We're all about changing how things have always been done, but we have to be more open-minded to understanding why things have always been done that way, and open to learning from older generations and not just trying to bring in what we have to share with them and change, because with technology, there's so much that's different from with Gen Zers to older generations in the workforce. And I don't think Gen Zers are as willing and open to learning about the process and how it's been going on for years as they are about, I'm in here now and here's how I want to do things. So I really recommend that Gen Zers just keep an open mind and learn from their superiors at work, how things run and what things at the company look like in the processes and everything that goes into their role before they jump in and try to change how things are going. Like I mentioned, they've got to be willing to sell themselves. They can't be afraid to, in an interview. I mean, if you're sitting there twiddling your fingers and biting your nails, that's not going to look like you're very confident and qualified for the role you're going into. So work on your networking and your people skills and figure out the best way to have those conversations. I think another thing too is that they need to be patient and they can't expect to rise to the top in their role right away or in their company right away. A lot of Gen Zers, I think, expect quite a bit out of their first role. And, they're not going to get a 6-figure salary and be head of their company and their first job. It takes time. It takes learning, even if you've got the degree or the skills that you need to be in a specific role. You don't have the experience, the contacts, the client base that someone who has been at the company for 5-10 years will have. There's so much learning that comes after college, after you get an education, that you can't get in the classroom. You just have to start in your career and learn from those above you if you want to eventually become like them. And I do think that Gen Z they need to work on their patience in that regard and understand that they can't land their dream role all the time right out of college. But if they're willing to be patient and put in the time and the work that it takes to learn how to get to that dream role, it's possible for anyone. They just can't give up too quickly on reaching it. And when it comes to employers and integrating Gen Zers into their companies, I encourage them to give Gen Z applicants a chance, give them a shot. Their resume they might not have 2-3 roles before this where they've been in the industry for a couple years and have their feet on the ground already, but by looking for someone who has that experience, you might be missing out on someone who is really willing to learn and someone you can almost kind of shape into the employee that you're looking for, because they're so passionate and grateful for the opportunity that you've given them just to get that interview and give them a shot in your role. So be willing to look at applicants who may not have 5+ years of experience, but have that passion and that drive to get to that level of experience in 2 years because they're so willing to learn. I also, on both ends, you mentioned the annual reviews, right? People
Yes.
nowadays, especially Gen Z, they're so used to instant feedback. I mean, I think about it. If they've got a question, all they got to do is type it into Google and they've got their answer right there. So if they are doing something wrong or there's something about their role that you want to change, as an employer, send them an email, set up a call, and explain it to them in that moment so that after 6 months go by and they've been doing it the same way and it's the wrong way, they're not caught off guard and saying, why didn't you tell me this 6 months ago? I would have made that change then. That constant open communication is, not only beneficial in that they won't feel like you're attacking them at the end of the year, right? When you're saying, here's all the things you did wrong and everything I want you to change. It's so much easier and less intimidating when you make that change and have that conversation in the moment when you realize it. And they, if they did something really well, send them an email and let them know that you're proud of them or that they did great work. Don't only email them when they're doing something wrong, because that'll make them feel like, they're always doing something wrong. They like to be recognized for like anyone does for what they accomplish. And having that open communication builds that trust and that relationship that you need in an employee to be able to tell them, like, if you'll see how responsible they are. You'll see if you can pass on maybe a part of your role to them when you need to take a trip for work or something, whether or not they're capable of handling that, because you've got that communication. They've asked all the right questions. They trust you and know they can learn from you. And I think just on both ends, the biggest thing is just being willing to learn from each other and to try new things, but also to see what you can gain from having a relationship between two different generations in the workplace, because it's so valuable what you can do together when you bring those two different skill sets to the table.
Awesome. Now I'm listening to you. You're mentioning being patient and not impatient, being willing to not having a boss and dealing with the boss, willing to be your own boss immediately. I feel I've been a Gen Z all my life.
I know, right? We have more things in common than we think.
Right? So when we talk about the different generations that are working with each other, what are actually the common things? Because to me, when you're mentioning recognize that someone has been doing something great instead of don't always criticize, but recognizing the good thing, it sounds to me that it's just pure great leadership. So what are the common threads you see between different generations?
Yes. So this goes back to my session with Michael at WEC, right? And how when we compare ourselves generationally and based on our differences, like our age or where we're from, we are only 10% similar. But when we look at our core human values, and this is all data from Value Graphics, which is this research-based database with they interviewed millions of people across basically every country in the world to gather the biggest collection of core human values that exist. And there are 56 core human values that we all have in common. And so I highly recommend anyone interested in this part of the conversation to look into Value Graphics for more info. But that's what Michael and I did for our session at WEC. And we pulled apart the main values that people in the meetings and events industry have in common. And a lot of those were financial stability. We all, want to feel secure in our roles. We don't want to question whether or not we'll be able to afford putting dinner on the table for our family. And that's where we could all come together. We all value having time to spend on what we love to do versus, you could love to do your job, but we've all got hobbies. We all have family that we want to spend time together with. So there's so much, right, that we all value inside, no matter how old we are, where we come from, that we can relate over. And in the workforce, we see the same thing. So for example, being recognized for our achievements, everyone loves that. Everyone appreciates, their boss saying, great work, giving them a pat on the back. It could be, like I said, as simple as an email or a quick phone call to let them know that they're doing a good job. But that's one thing that no matter how old you are or how long you've been in your career, we all appreciate and value that. Another thing that I think we all have in common in the workforce and over the different generations is that need for more communication. Now we're seeing, now that we have more technology and tools like Zoom and Teams and Outlook and all of these things, it's not as hard to communicate with each other, especially when you work remotely, as it was previously. I could have a face-to-face conversation with my boss from Chicago while he's in San Francisco and still have that communication that people would have in the office. But we need that communication to succeed in our roles. Another thing that I think is common among all generations in the workforce is we are all at this moment in time, especially with AI and the developments in technology lately, we're all so willing to learn and to try new things and to go about processes that we used to be having for years in a new way. And it may not look the same, like we may not have the same approach to those learning curves, but we're all interested in figuring out the best way to go about that together. So it goes down to literally like our core and what we care about on the inside and how we can relate to each other. And I think that's so interesting when you think about it, because I don't think people realize how alike we are when you look at two different people. I mean, you could put Tyler and I on a screen next to each other and there's not much you'll see in common. We both have brown hair and we both work for meetings today. But on the inside, there's so much that Tyler and I have in common. And that's what makes us such a good team. And we just have to find those values across your employees to build a strong relationship and build the strongest team you have to accomplish what it is that you're setting out to do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I
course.
didn't know you were that old because you used the word Google. I thought you were going to say Perplexity or Gemini or something like that.
No, Google. I know, I'm a Google girl. I've got an old soul a little bit. I like to call myself a zillennial, like Gen Z and millennial combined, because I do think I've got a lot of millennial tendencies. And that comes from I'm the oldest daughter, the oldest granddaughter, the first niece. I was the first in a new generation in my family. And I think they passed along a lot of their generation onto me as I was raised a Gen Zer with all these millennial and Gen X qualities. So a rare breed, I guess.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for
Of
sharing
course.
all those great insight with me today.
Yes, it's
How do
my
people
honor.
get in touch with you? I know you have your column is meetingstoday.com
Yes.
/ Gen-Z.
Yes, that's where my
But how do
column
people
is.
get in touch with you?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm a little hard to find because my name is so common, but if you type in Taylor Smith Meetings Today on LinkedIn, I'll pop up and anyone can add me on there. I'm always looking to make new connections. My email also is a super easy way. It's just taylor.smith@meetingstoday.com. And I like sharing that with anyone who wants to reach out to me because that's another easy way to reach me. I check my email all the time. And then just online on our Meetings Today website, which is easy, just meetingstoday.com. That's where all my stories are, all my columns run, and there's some more contact information at the bottom of those columns where people can find me. But yeah.
And I would say as well that you're an amazing speaker. The session with Michael was phenomenal.
Thank
So
you so
anybody
much.
want to engage on that topic, they should definitely reach out to you. My last question of the day. You never know who's listening to the podcast. And I have so many stories of people that have started a business relationship, got introduction because
Mhm.
somebody else was listening. What is a dream of yours, whether it's personal or business wise, that somebody's listening might be able to help you with?
Oh my goodness. I would love, so my dream has always been to be a travel writer. And I feel like in this role, I've gotten that. I've reached that goal of mine, but I still have yet to really explore international destinations. A lot of what I do is North America based. And I am really pushing at Meetings Today to increase our coverage of not only international destinations, but incentives and incentive events and planning. And so if anyone has, they're planning this really amazing incentive event somewhere internationally, like, please talk to me. Let me know what that looks like. What are you looking for when you read Meetings Today, like that coverage and stuff? Because my goal is to be that writer that just goes all over the place and covers all the places around the world and just tells all these stories. If I could one day start my own blog and monetize that and just be like, I'll just call it Tay's Travels and just write all about the places I see around the world, that would be an absolute dream come true. I'm the kind of person who I don't want to live in one place forever. I'm going to buy a van and I'm going to live in a different state every week and just drive around the country. So whatever I could do to just see as much of the world as possible, that is my dream. And then I'm going to write all about it.
That's
My big
awesome.
dream.
So in terms
Yep.
of incentives and incentive travel, I'll send you the book I wrote a few years ago, Meeting at Sea
Yes.
Level, 'cause that was my business. And in terms of traveling, again, your title is Content Development Destinations and
Yes.
Features. So if I knew your boss, I would tell that person to send you to another destination.
Yes. Yes. Please
Taylor,
do.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure.
Taylor, thank you so much for being a guest today and sharing all your experience and recommendation to work with Gen Z, and also to point out what are actually the similarities with people in general. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please follow me on LinkedIn, or you can go to the website eventbusinessformula.com, where you will find a lot of resources. And if you learned anything today, please share this episode with your network. Thank you. Bye-bye.